Hello, good afternoon from the Center for Contemporary Culture in Barcelona. This is Sónar+d CCCB. And in this next section, we are going to talk about robotics. And we are going to make it with two women that explore the more creative side of robotics. We are going to start with the artist and researcher Sougwen Chung. She is in Basel in Switzerland right now, and she does something that's very special. I think that she works with two apparently opposite things. On the one hand, something that's ancient and ancestral as drawing, and on the other hand, state-of-the-art technology with robots, artificial intelligence, etc. So please welcome Sougwen Chung.
Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes, you can start. We hear you.
Great, wonderful. Great, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here remotely with you all. I think this is the first time I've actually been propped up on a screen, just like a floating head in this way. So yeah, just very excited to be here with you guys virtually. Let's see if this presentation works. Okay, so I want to kick off what my presentation is about by just addressing the situation we're in. I want to thank everyone who has built up Sonar over the past, few decades, and also especially in this session for all the hard work in adapting it to the new reality of the pandemic this year. And I want to thank people watching online and also remotely and also in person for your attention and being part of what I see as a really vital experiment in sustaining and nurturing community. And I think through all this, we've been wondering what lies ahead. I certainly know I have been. And I've been asking myself, how can we explore new forms of art centered around creating communal experiences of care without physical proximity? And what ideas and ways of thinking must we leave behind to move forward? In my work as an artist and researcher, I've been exploring AI and robotics to develop new processes for human creativity. For the past few years, I've been creating art alongside machine, data, and emerging technologies, also exploring a little bit of what we think of as this binary, and more recently, I've been exploring biofeedback, telepresence, and plant-machine co-naturality. It's been part of a lifelong fascination with the dynamics of individuals and systems, and I think part of navigating the anxiety and wonder of the process and all the uncertainty that comes with it. It's been how I've been exploring questions about where AI ends and we begin, and where I develop processes that investigate potential sensory mixes of the future, I think, of which we're exploring right now. So I'm really excited about that. I've been thinking about it as the realm where philosophy and technology intersect. And doing this work has taught me a few things that I'd like to share with you today. It's taught me a little bit about how our interactions with machines can actually operate as creative catalysts for ourselves. And by doing so, I've been able to think a little bit more about not only my art practice and drawing, but also the state of technology as a wider whole. And by doing so, it's taught me what embracing imperfection can teach us about ourselves. And more importantly, that the things that we see as simulations on screen don't necessarily represent reality. Because what exists on screen operates at this sort of pristine, machine-readable format, and departs significantly by how the software is deployed physically. So the program will output one way on screen and another in physical space. And I think through this continual uncertainty, I believe that exploration has been a real precursor for my own growth and learning. Secondly, that art practice can function as a technique for expanding critical inquiry and socio-technical knowledge. I think before working with robotics, I didn't really have an understanding of the materiality of these systems as much because it was more about the pixels happening on screen. But through being able to train my own sort of knowledge on more physically constructed computational systems, I've been able to expand my own notion of muscle memory and yeah, just thinking more critically about the work in front of me. And it's taught me a little bit more about how combining AI and robotics with traditional forms of creativity, visual arts in my case, allows me to think a little bit more deeply about what is human versus what is the machine. And it's led to the realization that collaboration is really the key to creating the space for both as we both move forward. And I think especially over the past few months, it's made me reflect a little bit more on how navigating the uncertainty of the unknown and creating from it is really essential to facilitating the imagination necessary for building the future. And how artists throughout history, by engaging with uncertainty through subconscious manifestations of their anxieties of their generation through their art practice, have been able to transform the scope of our collective imagining. Thinking very much today of Nam June Paik's Internet Dream and how we've sort of navigated a little bit more towards being on screen ourselves. And the other day, I was watching a documentary on the activist and philosopher Grace Lee Boggs. And this excerpt really resonated with me. At 99, Grace says, "There are times when expanding our imaginations is what is required." And I linger at that sentiment because I believe our imagination, by and large, about what technologies are and what AI is, requires reevaluation and re-engagement. And I think we've been brought up with these divisions between human versus machine, natural intelligence versus artificial intelligence, the physical versus virtual, art versus science. And through the work, I've really been able to explore the synthesis of the two, and by doing so, questioning whether there's really such a thing as artificial intelligence, and what the lines between the physical and the virtual are, and how separate art and science really are. And through it, it's become very much about realizing what false binaries exist in our way of thinking and exploring what lies beyond it. Beware false binaries. And in a sense, it's become about that, but also the value of art practice in navigating it, and as well as explorations of these new ways of thinking and defining, new ways of imagining. For me, it's been explorations of the post-human subject, what happens when we blend intelligences and what that might mean, and the role of art practice in embodied research. Which leads me to this very new project that I've been showing inside this actually beautiful space on site. It's called Flora Rearing Agricultural Network, and it is a project exploring plant and machine co-naturality. The first iteration of Fran is a performance featuring the creation of a speculative, phantasmagoric blueprint for a new robotic network connected to nature. It was created during the first quarantine over the past few months, so it's very much in this kind of experimental phase. A backdrop of digital flora is linked to my brainwave data, each flux in alpha state seeding new formations of sepals, petals, and leaves. The performance is an initial introduction into what will be the physical construction of Fran, a networked robotic system to be built in 2021. The network imagines new symbiotic arrangements between humans, machines, and natural ecologies. And it actually came from a series of performances I did in Mexico City at the end of last year, in which I had to perform sort of situated in this beautiful jungle in Mexico. And I was really struck by how isolated these images of machine interaction with humans really are. And when I was working on these performances within nature, I was just struck by how much more vital and how how it felt like a truer way of engaging with the machine in a creative practice, and something that I wanted to include in how I was framing the collaboration. All through this, being able to recontextualize new ways of drawing and thinking about ways that traditional forms of creativity can evolve through technology and despite it. So a little bit of a background about me. Growing up, my father was an opera singer and my mother was a computer programmer. So I really grew up fluent in the languages of music, performance, and code. And for me, art and code were complementary and not distinctive. And for years, I worked with technology as this kind of means to an end, making room-scale installations by hand, creating these sculptural drawings, and then using projections. I painted on them with light and sound to create a multi-sensory experience for my audience. And at that time, working with these emerging technologies, for me, was very much tool-based, and it was a way to make my art and my performances more precise and immersive. But I sort of arrived at this new project nearly 5 years ago, actually in 2015. I wanted to experiment with something different. So it started with an experiment with machines called Drawing Operations Unit, Generation 1, which I called Doug for short, and that really caught on. And before I built Doug, I didn't know much about working with these types of units. I used some open source robotic arm designs and sort of just thought about what was really essential about what I wanted to do with my art practice. So I hacked together a system that, as opposed to learning every sort of software suite imaginable. And this was a really basic premise. I would lead with my drawing line and it would follow. I would draw a line and it would mimic my line. Research could be. For the second generation of Doug, rather than an accident caused by pushing a robotic arm to its limits, like in generation 1, I wanted to create a system that could respond to my drawing in a way I didn't expect. And at the time, and this gets a little bit long, and I know I'm supposed to only take 30 minutes or 20 minutes, but at the time, this story was really very popular in our public conception of how we were thinking about AI, which was fairly new for how we think about AI now. It was centered around an ancient Eastern strategy game called YK, and a computer program called Alphago, which was designed to play against the human. This is a pretty sort of old story at this point, but what I was really struck by in it was, not only was the sophistication of the system able to beat the top Go player, I think it was 4 games to 1, the reaction of the Go player, Lisa Dole, or the YK player, was really extraordinary and kind of profound to me, because he said that even though he lost, he was really inspired by what he saw as a unique creativity, uniquely non-human creativity that Lee deemed impossibly beautiful. And that really led to this interest in trying to uncover what a non-human creative instinct, or not instinct, but non-human creative moves could be within my own work through looking at my own work in a computational lens. So I used a combination of techniques to extract data from the visual information of decades of my drawings, and trained a recurrent neural net on this data set, generating predictive patterns in the work, and creating this first iteration of what we would call a feedback loop between human and machine. Back then, I painstakingly collected as many of my drawings as I could find, and since then, as an artist, I've been drawing for over 2 decades. Gathering that many drawings took months. It was a whole thing. And I'm gonna get through some more of these slides now. And it taught me through this project a little bit more about how an AI system was constructed. And it really, through making this work over the past few years, has demystified the process of what I thought of as an AI creative agent. Because, and this is sort of something I've observed through working in this field, it stems from an understanding that the relationship between humans and their tools have really changed, and that recognizing the patterns that are fed back to us through things like auto-suggest and auto-corrections really do have an impact on how we think about the world and defines how we see it. And working with this within my own art practice has really brought further to light what influences those things have. Because at the end of the day, it's really not a process of separation, but I think a feedback loop, a combination of different types of agencies between the creator's intent, the designers of the tool, and the constraints of the systems, and a suite of other social and political factors. And I think that has really empowered and inspired me to think about what the creation of these tools would be on my own terms. And that's been very much a reaction against this idea of making the AI do it, and the sort of relinquishing of control that kind of sets up. And through that, I've been able to create different bodies of drawing practices and drawing works that respond to some of these anxieties about the overhyped nature of AI and technology in general. I've been able to expand a little bit more my senses about my urban environment. This is Drawing Operations Unit Generation 3, in which I worked with a team to create 20 robotic units that would paint with me, who are also linked to the flow of New York City, which was really exciting because that really not only expanded my imagination for what a human individual could see through the apparatus of public cameras, but also what that meant from a sense of personal privacy and sort of who watches the citizens and the people moving through an urban space and how that might happen. So I think through doing that, people highlight the personal relationship with the machine, but it really expands my relationship with and the awareness of these sort of governing or not technological apparatuses around us. So throughout all this, it's been about engaging with uncertainty, really, and what I am continuously inspired by is how no two performances are ever really the same. And through the collaboration between art and science and myself and these robotic units, we make something neither of us could have done alone. And I think for me, this has been really rife with a lot of creative potential. Last year, which feels like a long time ago, I launched my own studio called Silicet, which explores collaboration between individual, synthetic, and environmental systems by connecting human and machine input to biofeedback and other kinds of ecological data that I'm starting to explore a little bit more now. This is a really quick loop from one of the last performances I did in Mexico City, where I connected my own heart rate to not only the movements of the robotic arm, but also the light in the room. So it really created this sense of environmental pulsing that I'm really interested to see how I can explore telepresently. Through this, I'm also exploring how the traditional art studio environment can be a locus for community discussion and critical thought. How can human and non-human collaboration expand our thinking about cooperation itself and what it means to create collectively? We're looking for collaborators, and I'd love to be able to chat more, hopefully in person, but also remotely, about some of the ideas we have underway. And Silicet is really founded on this idea that by teaching machines to do the work traditionally done by humans, we can evolve our criteria for what's made possible by the human hand. And it's about recognizing the fallibility of both human and machine, and very much to expand the potential of both. So that is a very, very quick run through of some of the things I've been interested in over the past little while. And if you'd like to follow along or get in touch, I'm at Sougwen on the internet. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Sougwen. We invite you to stay so we can have a Q&A afterwards. And now I'm going to present all of you, Mónica Rikić. She is also a creative technologist, a coder, and she also works with robots, and her robots today are here with her. So let's please welcome Mónica Rikić. She's going to talk about alternative technology. All yours.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Hi. So, hello, hola, buena tarde. I'm Mónica Rikić. Thank you very much for inviting me here, and congratulations, because this is super beautiful, like all the setup. Although we cannot all be together, we can be mixed this year, and I think it's very nice to be here in my city and in my neighborhood, actually. That's very good. Well, as I was saying, so my name is Mónica Rikić. I'm from Barcelona. I'm a new media artist, and I also work with, wait, yeah, okay. I need to put play. I also work with creative robotics. Thank you, Sougwen, for the presentation. It was amazing. I really like your work, actually. I'm an admirer. And I think that the main difference between the type of, just to frame it a little bit, the main difference between Sougwen's work and my work is that me, instead of focusing on, so I'm also interested in human-machine collaboration, but instead of focusing in the creative practice by itself and trying to create things, I'm more focused on the way it influences in a social way and the way we are all influenced by the use of technology and especially the use of artificial intelligence, and see what are, analyzing all these consequences and creating new social moments that could arise, imagining new social moments that could arise from that collaboration. I'm going to do a very quick introduction about my practice that you can see in the background video. So I work mainly with the physical world. I work with code, electronics, and objects, that it can be digital or non-digital, to create interactive projects that are often framed as experimental games. Or video games that go outside the screen, if you prefer. The reason why I like to frame my projects as experimental games is because I felt, since I studied fine arts, and while I was there, I always felt the thing that if you put something in front of non-specialized public, okay, I'm always talking about the mainstream public, people have like these boundaries confronting to art, thinking that there's something that they should understand that they do not understand, and I actually would love to do art more accessible. So I discovered that if I say that I'm doing experimental games better than interactive installations, people lose fear and they try to enjoy the playful experience that I always offer. Also, in my projects, I try to work with layers. So you first have this playful layer. As you can see in my display around here, I try to use colorful and colorful materials in a mix with, I don't know, the plastics and soft things that are not here in the moment, but also like foams and things like that. And so this was a way for attracting people to the piece, and then if you go deeper, you can go deeper, and then find a conceptual background or a technological thing that I'm analyzing and stuff like that. So as a statement, like a conceptual statement, I'm interested in the social impact of technology, as I was saying just before, and I like to take systems, technological systems, and rethink them through art. So the way actually the thing that took me to work at the moment with creative robotics, it wasn't a robotic project. It was actually a performance project that I was collaborating in 2016 for Ars Electronica with a friend of mine and kind of my mentor, that his name is Frederick Kirchner, and we were working in the social simulation project that it's half installation, half performance, where we created custom electronics and different like tools for people, like for humans to create a virtual society for other humans to live in. And well, funny enough, well, everything was happening through technology. You were creating the virtual society through technology, and you had to interact as a human in that society through technology. And funny enough, the less technology there was, the more interested people were. And what we tried to do with the project, the idea of the project, it was to get people, to force people to agree and to discuss about what are the parameters that create a society and how, how your idea of society, what type of society you want to create, what's your idea of the society, and this way you would be, we could analyze what were the projections that people were doing about the future they wanted to build, kind of, or future or present, or I don't know what, the 8-bit society, actually, because it was in 8-bit in a 4K space. 8K space, sorry, it's the deep space in Ars Electronica, I think is 8K. Well, anyway, by doing this project, I realized that with art, I could create and simulate spaces where technology wasn't only used as a tool, but it was the framework, container, and generator of social constructs, which is actually what we are involved always. I mean, through technology, we live, we communicate, we build our own representation and representation of others of the world. So I think that focusing my practice on that, with this project, I realized that focusing my practice on that was something that I was willing to do. Since then, and actually mostly for the past 2 years, I've been working on this series of futuristic fiction, robotic, interactive projects that try to find what would happen if it's always speculative, okay, it's science fiction and fictional projects, where I try to think with robotics, okay, what would happen if these robotics or actually artificial intelligent entities evolve as humans, because in the end is what we're trying to do. What would happen if they evolve socially, emotionally, and as a group like humans? What would be, and I want to imagine what would be the consequences, the output of that supposition. So the first project I was, these little guys here that were actually exhibited here in CCCB until not a very long time, in a video games exhibition, actually. I really like video games exhibitions that mixed new media art. Well, this was an instant reaction about my experience with the conduit. Why? Because as I said before, in the conduit we were given a tool for humans to create virtual spaces where other humans would live. So my instant question was, okay, what would happen if I create something for humans to create a human society for robots? Okay, it was like, since I was saying before, the more technology there was, the less was nice for, the less people, like humans, liked it. So let's try to do it for robots. So at the beginning, this is a project that I developed with a grant, and it was 2 years long, and actually changed a lot through the way. First of all, I wanted to do an artificial intelligence project with different, very sophisticated and stuff. And the more I got into artificial intelligence techniques, because I'm also a programmer and I was trying to, well, normally I do most of the projects myself. The more I was digging into artificial intelligence, the more interested I was in science fiction. It's like, oh, sorry, I thought someone said something. Someone said something? No? Okay, sorry. The more I was interested in science fiction. Okay, so what it started as an artificial intelligence project, well, sorry, I'm going to explain you a little bit how the project goes. So you have a mother environment and you have a multi-agent system that it's created by these little guys. There's 10 of them, okay? And the multi-agent system is based on a thing that is called BDI, which is beliefs, desires, intentions, okay? So each of the agents have their beliefs, their desires, and their intentions, and then their goal in life is to be happy, okay? And to be happy, they have to fulfill these desires, and it depends on how they are shaped, and it depends on how the environment is done and everything. So in the end, you have all these tablets. You had all these tablets in front of them, where you could see the life card of each one of them, and you can help them to be happy whenever they couldn't be by themselves. So I realized that, well, the public can interact with the robots through the tablets and all, but in the end, while doing this project, I realized that the most interesting part, it wasn't the installation itself, but the way, the things that you put inside the information you put inside the society. So I created these workshops with, you'd see some images of that just previously. The first workshops I did with the students of Masana Art School here in Barcelona, and in the workshops you sit around like different people, maybe you know them, it's like, okay, let's play to be God. We want to create a future. What type of future we want to create? When we discuss and we agree this type of future, then we would be like, okay, what are the most interesting roles that would live in this society? Then let's see which one is their biography, until we arrive to their beliefs, desires, and intentions. So this reduction of the human behavior that in the end we were doing manually, very manually. It's like doing artificial intelligence, but very manually, without models and stuff. Really, I saw that it really helped people that had nothing to do with technology to understand what were the processes and the things that were happening behind the devices that they were using all the time. Actually, this is the way the robots would have social behaviors by moving, okay? And these are some examples at my home. So in the meantime, while I was doing this project, as I said, it took me 2 years to develop that one. I created the project with these little guys over here that I wrote a little demo. And I really like to read about sociology, philosophy, and stuff like that in an amateur way, okay? And at that moment, I was reading about how one of the most important points for the human brain development was the development of language. And we use language for sharing our impressions of the world, sharing what we see in the world. And as social animals, I was going to say social robots, no, but social animals that we are, one of the most important things that we share is information about each other, and that's how gossip appears, right? So this is the theory of gossiping. Okay, that one of the things that brought the human brain development was the use of gossip. So as I told you before, I'm creating these science fiction narratives about fictional robots that evolve as human. So I would say, okay, would then robots gossip? Do robots gossip? So this project is called Data Gossiping Robots. And what I fed them with some information about my social media, and basically what they do is they go around, now they have the sound off, but they speak, and they start gossiping about the information they got. Because what I was thinking is, okay, if they evolve as humans, and as a human, your work is based on spying people, what would you do when you go back home? You would be doing like, oh, you know what I found out about this guy that I'm spying on at work, he's doing this and that, okay? So that was, I always try to put some humor in my project, so that was the idea of this one. So, all these projects, and I have a last one to talk about, but I want to stop for a second and just to say that this project question question the idea if what we are seeking in artificial intelligence is really the purpose for it, or it's an imposition that we as humans are trying to create a better version of humans through machines, which makes no sense, because then we would be a worse version of machines. No, so they would be a better version of humans, and we would be a worse version of machines. And actually, I started to notice that in Western society, our approach to others, and especially to non-human others, has always been from a superior relation of power. With artificial intelligence, that is changing, and we, for some reason, are seeing artificial intelligence as something better or equal to us. And this is because, I believe that this is because we are using so much, we are having a cognitive automation of our own minds by the use of technology, that artificial intelligence is actually benefiting from it. And I'm actually not scared about robots becoming humans, I'm scared about humans becoming robots, because we should not forget the things that cannot be countable. So, like as I said in Mother of Robots, we were reducing the human behavior into algorithms. So let's don't become algorithms. And after all this, the question that arose me was, what happens with our self-perception and emotional development in a world ruled by automaton God? And of course, I started asking as if there would be a genuine artificial spirituality. If there's a reason about if there's, well, not a reason, but if it's possible to imagine a genuine artificial spirituality. And my last project, that I'm just putting the video for Mars Electronica Garden 2020, which is the exhibition that is related to Sónar+d. You can still see the project until Sunday, yeah, till Sunday afternoon. So I created this project that is called New Home of Mine, that actually embraces the idea of having a genuine artificial spirituality from the fictional, speculative, as I keep on saying, because I'm not scientific, I'm just speculating, story, narrative about artificial intelligence with existential crisis. The existential crisis of this artificial intelligence comes because they have taken the purpose of being. I mean, I'm sure you all know that artificial intelligence is intelligence because it has a purpose. You make it do something. So imagine that you take that purpose from the artificial intelligence, and since it has been made to be a better version of humans, it doesn't know what to do, because actually our nature and machines' natures are completely different. Also, being a conscious machine means that not only make, as I was saying before, not only make very fast and very associations and very fast calculations, but it also means to have a whole sense of I amness, okay, in Spanish, el yo. And no one has ever made that with machines yet, but I was just imagining what would arise from that scenario. So I created, I imagined three main axes of the artificial intelligence existential crisis. One, it would be time. It's afraid of time because it has no future. Time is a main thing for our conscience. We project in the future and we recognize ourselves in the past. So how we would be conscious without time. The other one is it's afraid of the uncertain because everything it knows it can be predicted, or what it can't predict, it can't even imagine. So we as humans acquire our knowledge by experience. So we live things, so we find its singular meaning. Each one of us have a singular meaning. That's how we acquire consciousness. Machines, when artificial intelligence acquire by accumulation, acquire the knowledge by accumulation, so it cannot predict, it cannot imagine unpredictable options, okay, so they cannot imagine. And the last one, it's afraid of death because it cannot experience it. I'm not sure if you are related with the uncanny valley effect, but when we have that effect with machines, we see our death reflected in robots. What it would be the uncanny valley effect the other way around? What would it be for our artificial intelligence to see ourselves as similar but able to die, and he wouldn't be able to die? And yeah, well, this is just another picture. And just to finishing, I would like to say that these projects seek the nature of machines from speculative fiction, and I think that art is very important for imagining these different, well, these alternative futures or these other ways that we can think about technology. And as I keep insisting, we shouldn't all become algorithms, and we should all be, maintaining what is ours. And there was in 2012, Jonas Leher, sorry, I cannot pronounce his name very good. He's also the author of Proust as a neuroscientist, was writing an essay called The Future of Science is Art, with a question mark. And he was pointing out how different creators were actually discovering things that afterwards in neuroscience were, well, at the moment weren't even labeled. And then with the time, neuroscience was going back to this concept that artists and creators and novelists and different people that weren't scientists were imagining, and then it becomes science. So I want to finish my conference with a quote from him, from his book Proust Was a Neuroscientist, and it says, "We know now enough to know that we will never know everything. This is why we need art. it teaches us how to live in mystery. Only the artist can explore the ineffable without offering us an answer, for sometimes there is no answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monica. Now we are going to take questions from the audience. If there are, you need to know that if you want to make questions to our speakers, you can do so using our networking app that you can go to our website, download it, and it's very easy. Actually, if you are watching this, you are already logged in, so you can go straight to the chat and ask questions, so we can forward these questions to our speakers. And while we are waiting from the audience's questions, I'm going to throw myself one. You have both, for both, you can answer both. You have both mentioned quite a few times the relationship between art, science, and technology. So I would like to know what is your reflection about it. Sougwen, how about you?
That's a great, very broad, and I think depending on how you look at it, very deep question. I don't see, I think especially through working more with the practice that I have, I don't see those things as necessarily that separate. I feel like a lot of the premises that fields of scientific research try to kind of create knowledges around, especially today, artists are doing the same, which is what can the human hand catalyze in an automated system? You know, what are these sort of deeper questions about constructing like presence and effect in the world? I feel like a lot, these are sort of components of one larger whole. And I think the division between art, science, and technology is to think about it as separate actually is a limitation on what is possible through working within all these fields. Because to some extent, we're all kind of implicated by the technologies that we use in the systems that we participate in. So I think it's about recognizing our agency through that across disciplines.
Monica, how about you?
Yeah, I think, well, it's like, I think someone would agree, like if you, it's my way of living, I do art and science, so for me it makes no difference to talk about both of them. I think there's more, there has been, and I'm sorry if someone gets angry, but I think it has been more will of making this separation more from the science world than from the art world. But I think little by little, it's becoming less and less. And as I was naming before about Jonah Lehrer, he was saying that we should create the fourth culture where everything is it's together, so there's no separation, and you can actually. And I mean, we use metaphors to explain a lot of scientific events and scientific things since the beginning of times. I mean, about the Big Bang and about different things. So I think science has always used art, but they just haven't realized until now that we actually use the tools, I guess.
We have a question for both from Joaquim Gamero. It is often said that the tech world, that the code creation for problem-solving software can be automatized, that we could reach a point where we need no coders. What's your point of view on this as an artist?
You want to answer? Or, well, I can answer, but you can
I'll just say I would wonder, I don't think I've heard that as much, but I think if we really run that premise through to its conclusion, then I would say that, you know, a world without developers or designers would mean that everything that came before would be further amplified, and I don't think that's necessarily as alluring as whoever is saying that would actually want you to think.
So the question was about if we have...
If the world, if artificial intelligence works so good that the world doesn't need any coders to do the work.
Then we will lose control about everything, no? Yeah, me as a coder, not a computer scientist, but as a coder, I think if coding is like painting, if they would take that away from me, then it takes you control, and then you can, at least from my point of view, I would start thinking about other things. You know, it fits my mind and start programming. So what if we don't need no coders? How boring would that be?
There is a question from Theodore Mist for you, Monica. Could you please repeat the book's title and author that deals with art as a new science?
Okay, I cannot pronounce his name, sorry, properly, okay? It's Jonah, okay, with an H in the end, and it's Lehrer, okay, L-E-H-R-E-R. The essay was published in 2012, and it was called, in SID magazine, and it was called The Future If Science ... is Art, and question mark. And the main book is called Proust Was a Neuroscientist, and it was published in 2007.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it seems that we cannot take any more questions, unfortunately, because we have run out of time. Thank you very much, Sougwen, and thank you very much, Monica, for joining us this year at Sónar+d CCCB. Please join your hands together for them. And I just want to tell all the people who are watching our streaming, don't go away, don't disconnect. There is music and surprises coming up. Hold on, don't go.